네, 여러분 안녕하세요. 저는 캠퍼스 서울 총괄 임정민입니다. 오늘 금요일 저녁에 또 불금인데 술 마시러 안 가시고 여기 오시는 게 정말 신기하고 또 고마운데요. 이거 마치고 맥주 한잔 하러 가시면 될 것 같고요. 저희 작년부터도 저희 여기서 인공지능에 대해서 계속 이야기를 많이 했었죠. 여러분들이 많이 왔었고 또 그 중에서는 제프 딘도 오셨고 마이크 슈스터도 오셔가지고 올해 초에 인공지능 머신러닝에 대해서 이야기를 했었고요. 오늘은 좀 더 특별한 세션입니다. 벤 레비 보스트랩랩스의 코파운더인 벤 레비 씨가 오셔가지고 저희 구글 직원이 아니시죠. 외부의 시각으로 또 인공지능이 어떻게 발전할 것인가, 다음 세대 인공지능 어떻게 발전할 것인가에 대해서 이야기를 해주신다 그래서 저희가 모시겠습니다. 여러분 벤 레비 씨입니다. 고맙습니다.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. 1, 2, 1, 2. Great. Thank you. Thank you for coming tonight. So, how many of you are entrepreneurs? Raise your hand if you are a founder, an entrepreneur. Okay. We're about 20%. Anyone is an investor? All right, a few, okay. Who is works in large corporations? Anyone? Okay, 1 or 2. What are the other doing? Are you students? Yes, mostly students? Okay, great. Thank you for coming tonight. So let me jump straight into the topic of tonight. Applied artificial intelligence. We're about to witness one of the largest disruptions in the history of the world, the very same way that the Industrial Revolution changed the way we live and work today. It's scary for a lot of people. It's exciting for others. I think humans have a nature of being scared of the unknown, and so we tend to reject changes. That's why you see a lot of headlines. Of course, in Korea recently you had AlphaGo competition, which brought the world around this topic. We'll talk a little bit more about that and some of my views on what happened during those few days. But first, let me jump in a little bit and tell you about my company, BootstrapLabs. We're venture builders. And venture builder is not just venture capitalists. Venture builders are people that actually been building companies and assist founders building their companies. A little bit about me and my co-founder. Nikolai Wattstrom is a Swedish entrepreneur. He's built companies ever since he was 16, 17 years old. He was coding at age 12, making money by building games at 16. At 18, he dropped out of college and he went to build an AR, VR companies in the late 80s, early 90s. So that stuff is not really new, by the way. He went on to build many companies throughout his life. He never had a steady job. He built companies, took them public. He actually crashed and burned a few. And then he started investing in other entrepreneurs to help them out. Then moved to Silicon Valley to build BootstrapLabs because he saw a void, he saw a challenge that you are facing here and people around the world are facing, which is you can innovate. But to take your innovation and to scale it, to make it global, is very challenging. So while you have access to knowledge, and you have access to creativity, and you have access to technology, you can innovate as good as anyone in Silicon Valley. But your ability to scale a business to become a global leader from Seoul, from Korea, or from France, or from the UK, or from Germany, is very different. Right? So talent is equally, distributed everywhere. Opportunities are not. Personally, I came from France, born, raised, educated in France. I moved to Silicon Valley in 1998, so I've been there about 18 years now. Fell in love with the Bay Area, then fell in love with my wife, which is from Korea. You might see her tonight coming later with my 2 kids. I spent my life either in investment banking, helping entrepreneurs raising money, selling their businesses. And so I always saw that helping entrepreneurs raising money was to help them fulfill their vision. And selling a business was to allow them to realize the capital and the investment they made into building a business. And then I went on to build my own businesses. I built 2 companies. raised money, sold the companies, crashed and burned one, and then decided to spend more time with entrepreneurs to share some of the knowledge and wisdom. Spent all my life in technology. And so Nicola and I met randomly around a passion to support entrepreneurs and to help invest in exciting technology companies. And these days, we spend most of our time around applied artificial intelligence. So what's a venture builder? Very quickly, we're based in Silicon Valley. We are building a community on a global scale. We say, look, smart people are everywhere. They're not just in Silicon Valley. They're in Seoul, they're in Paris, they're in London, they're in Africa, they're in India. They're everywhere. Now, the ability to, again, build incredible companies out of this country is very hard. So we build a global community. Then we bring venture capital, because money is the fuel. You need money to build your business. But money is not everything. Money is actually less important than people. Naval, the founder of AngelList, said famously, a company doesn't die when it runs out of money. A company dies when the founders run out of energy. When you give up is when your company dies, not when you have no money. So we try to build outliers. Prezi is one of the famous companies that we invested in. We found them in Budapest when there were only 3 people. And if they stayed in Budapest, they would have died. Today, it's a company that's worth $500 million. They have hired 300 or 400 people. They have 80 million users around the world. They become one of the world leaders in their industry. But if they stayed in Budapest, they would have likely died. Trusted Insight is a fintech company, a bit like AngelList. Zerply is a platform for very creative talents that talks about the future of work, the way you're going to work, especially those students that are just starting. And it's going to be very different from the way I'm working. We're going to really change the way we're going to be working going forward. So I'll fast forward on that. And again, we see deal flow from around the world. We see it from Europe, we see it from the US, and all parts of the world. We see 60 companies from 60 countries. We see about 1,000 companies every year, and we invest in less than 1%. So the odds of getting money from us are very, very small. But we love the idea to see a lot of companies from around the world because it gives us a lot of information and global trends on what's happening where. We invest from the lab stage all the way to early Series A, and then we tend to work with our LPs and corporate partners for follow-on fundings. We invest with some famous people, and when you happen to live in Silicon Valley, it happens all the time. And then we also have a lot of access to follow-on capital, which is very important when you're an early-stage investors. You always want to make sure that you have people that can like what you do and continue investing in some of your companies. So recently, actually, it's almost 2.5 weeks ago now, we hosted the first Applied AI conference in San Francisco. Believe it or not, while Silicon Valley is maybe mecca for artificial intelligence, there was no major event like this, talking about the way you apply artificial intelligence, the way you commercialize it. And these events were either hosted by large players that promote their technology, but not independent players like ourselves that are actually investing in this industry and bringing all the players together. So we actually brought about 400 people came together at this event, from Facebook, Uber, Airbnb, Kik Interactive, you name it. Everybody was there, and we had a lot of fun. And it was very interesting to see how the interest around the topic, not so much artificial intelligence in general, but how you take artificial intelligence, and we'll talk about it more, what it means, because it's too broad of a term. How do you dive in and apply it into a context where you can really drive value, which is what you as entrepreneurs want to do. So will AI eat the world? Like famously Andreessen Horowitz said, software is eating the world, AI is eating the world. But before I can answer this question, we need to start going back to what are we talking about? What is applied artificial intelligence? So it's not AGI, it's not a general intelligence. It's not this superhuman being that will kill us all. So it's not this guy, and I don't know if you're old enough to remember, but that was from HAL 9000, and that was a pretty scary computer on board an Odyssey in the space. Supposed to actually maintain alive all the crew on board, but end up killing everybody. That's not this guy either, sorry, SoftBank. But that's really not what we're talking about. And it's definitely not that guy, hopefully. So what we're talking about is really a combination of things. Artificial intelligence is just not one thing. It's many things. It's the term that captures many different building blocks. And these building blocks can be driven by big branches like machine learning, natural language processing, expert system, vision, speech, planning, and robotics. And of course, underneath that has many more subfolders. You've heard a lot about deep learning lately, of course, reinforced learning, and unsupervised learning, non-supervised learning. And so let's dig into that a little bit more, because once you understand that, when people say AI, it's just too general. You need to understand specifically what do they do, how do they do it, and to what end. So I think a simple way to describe it is general versus narrow. So general is still very much driven into the lab or large corporations that have access to massive amount of data and resources and can throw a lot of that and a lot of computing powers to solving these problems. Narrow AI is the one that are trying to focus on one very specific pain point and improve on that using those technologies that I mentioned earlier. So applied AI lives in this world. Applied AI is trying to understand a few problems and apply machine intelligence, machine learnings, and different technologies to make that problem go away. And that's what you as entrepreneurs want to do right now. Because unless you have the amount of resources Google and Facebook and others have, that's a good place to start. So back to the question, will AI eat the world? We think absolutely. We think we're absolutely into a new dawn of next wave of industrialization. We're talking about really autonomous system and autonomous machine. So what do we mean by that? If you look at the last wave of industrial revolution, we basically tried to automate as many things as we could, and we've seen a massive amount of improvement in productivity. And if you think about it, even in wealth distribution across the world. Now, when you start moving from very simple tasks that are just rule-based, like machine learning initially was rule-based, you would just hard code things, or you would basically compute every single possibilities and then make decisions. We're moving into much more complex things now, where you're able to have a software make decisions upon imperfect conditions. You don't have all the answers. And that's what very much happened during the AlphaGo game. That's what shocked a little bit the world. They say, oh, that's the ultimate limit, because you can't brute force this system. You can't just throw all the combination into the computer and calculate all the outcomes. It doesn't work. You can't do that. So you have to make decisions in imperfect situations, which is we as human beings do all the time. It's very easy for us. So what's more exciting is that really it's not a question of when AI is going to find its way into everything in your lives, every single businesses, every single actions that are simple that you do every day. There's a lot of machine learning already behind some of the things you do. I know Uber has been banned, but you call a cab, there's a lot of AI behind that, right? You might be chatting to somebody, you have a response automatically generated by the computer answering your question. That's a lot of AI. It's already there. Sometimes you see it, sometimes you don't. So we think it's going to disrupt basically every single industry and every single business, large and small. I don't care if you're a two-person business or if you're a sole entrepreneur. You should be using actually AI a lot more than everybody else because you don't have the resources. So automating a lot of things is a good thing for you. So finance, health, commerce and retail, manufacturing, construction, logistics, transport, all these things will be impacted. And you're talking trillions of dollars of market. But you mean real AI. We're not talking about, we're talking about the ones that really they need to have some self-learning mechanism, self-reinforcement. It can't be these rule-based systems. It has to be improving and learning from its mistake or the new data coming into the system. So that's the sort of disruption we're going to see going forward. It's really software that are becoming smarter. Today, most softwares is waiting, doing nothing. It's waiting for you to give it input, to give it direction, to ask something of that software. Tomorrow, this software will do a lot of things without you even knowing. And they will only bring to you information that is relevant when it's relevant. And so we're going to go from a passive to more proactive type of software, doing things without your knowledge or just bringing information to you when it's relevant. So what has changed? Why now? You know, again, AI is not new. It's been out there since the 60s. And every time you had hypes and what you call the AI winters. There would be excitements building, and then everybody would say, well, it's impossible, it's not going to work, we spend so much money, this is going nowhere. So what has changed today? Why is all of a sudden everybody's talking about AI? And it's not about AlphaGo. I'm sorry. It's not about that. It's actually one of those things that happen very silently behind the backgrounds, behind closed doors, in the labs, in the universities, inside the large corporations, inside the little startups. That all of a sudden, you have massive computing power. And so anyone that is in the gaming industry understands what I'm talking about. Because you guys early on needed a lot of graphic power. And so you had GPUs that started enabling you building those cool games with a lot of information coming at you all the time. That's what now is being used to run a lot of the deep learning and neural networks that we're talking about a lot. So NVIDIA has been a leader in the space, and today is one of the leaders in providing the hardware that allows you to start computing these things really quickly and efficiently. But then they're not the only one. But so the ability to compute at scale in the cloud, very fast, with connectivity is what has changed. The cost of storing the data and the explosion of data. So I think somebody said in the last 2 years, we have created more data in the world than we ever created in the history of the world. So I guess the good news is humans say, I give up. There's just too much information. I can't do it myself. I have to use machines. Because machines are really good at doing repetitive things, and we human beings hate it. We hate it. So on that sense, it should be a good thing. So again, these are really the underlying enablers of what has really changed. So another way to think about it is like the ability to scale things. I think the biggest opportunity is really bringing what we call human augmented technology. So I'll get back on that a little bit. Human augmented machine intelligence. You need to bring the strength of humans, what humans are really good at, and what's still really hard to do for machines, to what machines are really good at, and picking up on patterns and crunching so much information that we can't do humanly in our lifetimes. So more and more we'll see humans coaching AI. But then we might see AI coaching humans. And maybe that's a good point to actually make my argument that in AlphaGo, during the game, everybody talked about move 37, which was this crazy move that no one had seen before and puzzled, player. I think it's interesting because not only I think it destabilized the player, but it also allowed the machine to win. But then I think, Lee Sedol was actually inspired and really started learning from the machine that there's a whole new way of playing this game that he never really thought possible before or even thought about it. And he became a better player as a result of that. Now, what's incredible is that as human beings, we can't play the amount of hours that this machine was able to play. So with the limited amount of data and information we have as human beings, we're still incredibly performant. And by the way, all these computing things we do in our brains, we do it at a fraction of the energy cost that those machines are taking. You know how much electricity it takes to really power those server farms? And you know how much electricity you use in your brain? Very little. We are a lot more efficient, right? Thousands and thousands of years of evolution have brought us there. That's why there's so much interesting research fields between natural science and computer science, right? To understand those efficiencies that nature has been able to brought upon. So the ability to scale is really what's unparalleled today. So if you put a chart together, because I like charts, they are simple to understand, you basically say, look, for the last 50, 60, 70 years, massive amount of R&D spent. National labs, research centers, universities, large corporations, you name it. Millions of dollars, maybe billions of dollars invested in all the different branches of AI. Now, we think we're here. We think we're at an inflection point. We think that now we see the emergence of what we call applied artificial intelligence and applied AI solutions. Again, back to those narrow cases where you can identify a pain point and you know that applying AI technologies, you can solve it much more efficiently and scale it. Now that's where it's becoming interesting for VCs, because as VCs, we don't have as much money as Google's or Facebook's, but we can invest a little bit of capital in entrepreneurs that can now have the means to start creating interesting solutions. Because you don't have to reinvent the wheel. Because thanks to Google TensorFlow and other opening platforms, you're going to be able to leverage these building blocks and start solving problems using AI-type technology. And you don't have to invest the millions and millions of dollars that have been invested by those players. And by the way, they want you guys to go use that every day, because you're going to find 101 ways to create new softwares and new case studies that they would have never thought possible or even thought about. And so that's why it's important, the movement of open AI is also important, because we want AI type technology not to be driven by just, 25 to 45 years old men. We want women, we want children, we want people from different religions and backgrounds, because all these different viewpoints needs to come together. It's very important that diversity is injected into this kind of technology. So what's going to happen, like it happened in the mobile era or the cloud era, you're going to see leaders emerging really quickly. They're going to take a little capital early on, and then as soon as they're going to figure out some product market fit, they're going to start growing really fast. They're going to raise a lot of money, and they're going to become very valuable. So you can think about every software you use today that was created in the last 5, 10 years, even 15 years. Some industries have been using very old software. You can rewrite all of these softwares using AI-first approach. That's going to be disruptive, and that's going to generate massive amount of value for the users, for the corporations, and for the people that are building those softwares. Now, as investors, we like that those players, they love to acquire this technology and the talent. So talk a bit about that. What's the analogy to this moment in time that you find yourself into, luckily? I mean, you're all, at an age where you can start your business, you can get involved, you can, on behalf of large corporations you work into, be a change agent and tell them, hey, this is coming, we need to do something about this, because that's going to impact us. It's not something for the movies. It's no longer for the movies. It used to be for the movies. Now, I call that almost another iPhone moment or smartphone moment. People tell me, oh, but Ben, the big guys, they have all the data. Startups have no chance. How can you compete? Well, look, maybe you don't do deep learning first. Maybe deep learning is great because it creates some interesting improvements upon traditional machine learning approaches. But if machine learning for very quickly and efficiently and cost efficiently gives you 80% accuracy, maybe 80% accuracy is good enough for what you need to do. As a startup in phase 1, maybe as you start building and growing, you start raising more money, having more resources and more data, you can start applying different type of technologies under the AI branches and start using deep learning methodologies. Maybe that's not what you should start with, because it's too cost prohibitive. Right? As a startup, you should always think about cost and opportunity. Right? So to me, it's like, look, when the iPhone came about, or Android, you could build an app. It wasn't the end of entrepreneurs. It's like, well, so be it. Everybody can build an app. That's great news. It's cheap. It's actually stable. You can distribute it pretty much everywhere pretty quickly, and you can monetize it. So that created the entire mobile economy we live into now. And today, the same thing is happening with AI technology. The giants are all opening up pieces and blocks of AI technology for you to start playing with. And so your ability to build AI-driven software is going to increase significantly. And that's pretty exciting. So that's how we look at it. The question is always, what are you going to build? If everybody can build something with AI, then your true differentiation is going to be, what problem are you solving? How big is the problem? Are you creating value for your users? And these are always the same 3 things you look at as a VC. And as an entrepreneur, that's what you should be looking at. So I argue that by using even open source technology applied in a certain context to solve a problem, you will accumulate a lot of data of that specific context that will make your technology valuable, and your company valuable, and your company differentiated. So, a few examples of applied AI today. Again, everywhere, agriculture. You have basically the ability to geofence some fields. People are using it for making sure that you don't reclaim piece of land that don't belong to you really quickly. You can start checking the temperature of everything. You can start, again, using clean energy to do those things as well. You can use it to grow crops with a lot less water, a lot more efficiently, right? In areas where you don't have water, like California lately. Manufacturing, we all know that, it's everywhere. We know that Foxconn just fired 60,000 people. It's a big headline. The robots are coming. They got to take your jobs. Well, so here's my take on that. If you had told a farmer in 1800s that most of you today would be working in an office, answering emails and phone calls, not getting your hands dirty, not growing anything really, and getting paid a lot of money, they would say you're nuts. I want that job, right? So my point being, we can't even think about the kind of jobs that are going to be created in 20 or 30 years. Because again, our mind is very linear. Human minds is very linear. Technology improvement is exponential. Right? Our friends, Rob Nell, the CEO of Singularity University, was speaking at a conference, and that's all they spend their time talking about and educating people about. Your inability as people to project changes at an exponential speed. So these are some of the basically mining operations with caterpillars that are running completely autonomously. No humans involved. Trucks going around, digging, piling dirt, taking it out. You're going to see a lot more automation going forward. Of course, transportation, everybody talks about it. Tesla has reduced by 50% the amount of accidents on the road just by launching their autopilots. They're collecting so much information. It's incredible. The amount of data they have on the industry and what people are doing with their cars is incredible. Now, we all know about Google. We all dream of getting delivery at home, but I think we'll see a lot more things flying in the future. It's a space we define as agile aerospace. So listen for that word more, because you're going to see it more and more. It's about what's happening between 0 and basically a few hundred meters up in the air. Right now, there's nothing. And that's a good thing, because that means it's a lot easier to not bump into things. Because if you ask me, having one of these cars on the road, coexisting with non-autonomous cars, with inefficient drivers, prone to mistakes, with people walking and crossing the streets, you're talking about the worst nightmare for a machine to find its way efficiently. This is the hardest things to solve. And so I think we'll see things flying across different areas, maybe unpopulated areas, or for emergency systems, a lot sooner than we might see things in the street, really. And from a regulation standpoint, of course, it needs to be there. But I think in some situations, you will totally accept things flying. That one is really cool. I'm not sure I would use it, but I love to sit in there, press a button, say, take me to Tahoe, I can go snowboarding for the weekend. Interesting example as well. So again, these are the fleets of trucks that crossed Europe autonomously recently, and they were basically following one another's, and it's pretty cool. But on the other side, if I'm a driver on the road and having these things next to me, I'm not sure how I would behave next to that. Pretty scary. Autonomous tanker, interesting example. And these guys manage to move goods around the world. A lot of the world would not work without these tankers were running around the world every day, moving physical goods. Now, some companies we had in our office, they came to see us and say, hey, we were playing with the algorithm the other day that actually allow us to route the super tankers from point A to point B around the world. And we did a bit of improvement. I think actually the super tankers, they were arriving about a minute or 2 minutes sooner into their destination than before, thanks just to the algorithm. And by doing so, they realized they impacted the price of oil globally. A tweak in an algorithm can modify the price of oil globally. Now, these people, they say, it's interesting because humans are really inefficient. If we could replace the humans piloting those supertankers, because they just use the gas on and off, they go into the wind, they don't look at the waves, they're just like piling through and burning a lot of gas. They say if we could actually use autopilots that would actually monitor these things and act accordingly, we could save $10 million a month in gas. So back to the point I made earlier, if 0.1% improvement in performance has a massive impact because you're talking about something highly scalable or has a big, broad market impact, it's probably worth spending a lot of money to solve that 0.1% improvement. But if you're talking about me responding faster to my emails, I'm not sure it's going to be worth that much. All right. It's not just manufacturing, it's not just farming, it's every job. It's going also after the jobs that all parents want you to have. Be a lawyer, be a doctor, right? Sorry, mom and dad, the robot took my job. Well, sorry, yeah, you spent all your money on my education and now it's worthless. Well, look, school is not about what you learn at school. School is about learning to think and learning to learn. Right? So we're going to spend our lives learning. This is just, it's endless. You need to make it fun and do what you love because otherwise that's painful. But robot advisors, they're going to become, there's a company that's basically using AI and machine learning type approach to say, look, there's all these documents out there that are public. Those public filings of records of, basically lawsuits out there. So why don't we process the hell out of all these documents? And now, when a client comes to me and says, I need to trial on this topic in this court of law against this judge, who is the lawyer I should hire? And instead of giving me the standard, you should use these guys, they're the best law firms in the marketplace, now I'm going to be able to say, you know what? That little lawyer in that little village is the best. Because when you talk about that topic in that court of law, against that judge, he tends to have indemnities 50% lower than everybody else. And you know why? Because he's just a good buddy with the judge and their kids went to the same school and they hang out on the coffee shop once in a while. Right? But that's going to be down to the level of accuracy we're going to have. And so the good news for the small guy is that machines going to level the playing field. Now, the bad news for the big guy is that their marketing dollars is not going to help them anymore to create noise around are they good, are they not. A lot of things will be data-driven. And that's a scary world. Right? So a lot of companies that are trying to say, I'm going to put you out of a job, while they're trying to sell the solutions to the lawyers, they're going to have a problem in their business model. Right? So as a startup, you need to think about not replacing the people first, but think about how do you make them better? How do you empower people? Right? Financial advisors, concierge, I think it's happening also in Korea now, but it might not be AI-powered, it's human-powered. But it's coming. But I think we always had this vision of this robot doing everything for us. It's not going to happen, not anytime soon. Right? But it's going to start doing a lot of very cool things for us. It's even managing your financing these days. And I think people say, well, but there's nothing new in the algorithm in finance, for example. The hedge funds have been using this algorithm for a long time, and now legal robots are coming and repackaging this whole thing and say, hey, you can have legal robots, you can have a financial advisor, right? You can give them your money, they automatically invest it based on your age and your color preferences. But what's interesting there is that actually makes it affordable for a lot of people that didn't have a wealth advisor before. I don't know when's the last time you spoke to your banker. Do you even have a banker? Do you know them by name? It's usually a phone number, and every time it changes, and sometimes it's like, press 1, press 2, press 3, press 5. I still don't talk to anybody, right? And so that's changing, but you're also augmenting. And so think about this. There's a lot of people that don't have internet connection today. 3 billion people, actually, that are not connected. So I think this kind of technology will allow you to start reaching out to a lot more people that don't have basic services today. So we had a young startup that spoke at a conference. They're using basically AI to provide emotional support to refugees in Europe. Refugees go through tremendous amount of stress. And when they find themselves in their camps, they usually went through traumatic moments. And economically speaking, it's not viable to provide them with emotional support, emotional health. We don't have enough therapists to help these people, right? Even the Red Cross is well intended, they can't. So these guys have an application with some very basic AI technology that allows people to share their feelings and get input and feedbacks and have a conversation in their language. That's help. It's not perfect. But the point again is being that technology is going to be able to reach people that were not being reached before, right? Talked about that. So I was touching on that, impact on society. Again, we're going to see autonomous systems pretty much everywhere. It's going to be pretty game-changing in a lot of things, driving impact. We're going to see automations. White-collar jobs are not protected, some of which will be automated. Look, a lot of the things that you hate in your day-to-day job, if you could automate it, would you? A lot of the repetitive things that are boring, right? Would you want to spend more time on the stimulating things, the exciting things, the things that you enjoy doing? That's the idea. The thing is that nobody's painting this picture to us. All the media is saying, you're going to lose your job. This robot's going to eat your job. And you're going to be unemployed. And that's going to be really bad. Right? But nobody says, hey, life is going to be a lot better. Right? There's already experiment talking about universal income. Say, look, if a lot less people are needed and a lot more machines are producing a lot of the goods and services and food that we need as human race, maybe we should just start distributing a minimum income to people so that everybody has enough to subsist. That sounds very, I don't know, communist. I grew up in France, so I'm going to use the word socialist. Again, governments, very interested in what's happening there. They have to wake up. They realize that technology is moving very fast. Entrepreneurs have access to latest technology. They are developing the new technology. We advise the Department of Homeland Security and others, government agencies, informally, but you realize that they are challenged today. They used to have all the resources in the world to attract the best talent, to invest into research areas, and be at the forefront of innovation. And today, they can't attract the best talent. It doesn't require that much capital. And they are the worst customer to work with because it takes 2 years to sign a contract with the government. So everybody's fleeing in the opposite direction in the private world, and the private world has more innovation than the public agencies supposed to protect you. That's a problem. So it's not human versus machine. People love to put that again together, always and always in front of you. I would argue it's human plus machine. It's human augmented technology. And you all know that scene from Minority Report. I think my little insight here is to say, we've been chasing that for a long time. The people in the movies, they can project these amazing things, and we're like, oh, why don't we have that already? And augmented reality is a lot harder than virtual reality. There's a lot more challenges, right? Because I would accept to have a big mask on my face if I'm in a sofa or something like not too many people. But if it's augmented reality and I'm moving around in the physical world, then I probably don't want to accept having such a big thing on my face. That wouldn't look very good. But in my living room, I don't mind. Plus, you still need a lot of different equipment to make it feel really immersive. But I think my argument here is that actually what you're looking at is not Tom Cruise. It's not Tom Cruise interacting with the physical world. I offer to you Tom Cruise avatar. Tom Cruise avatars is in the virtual world. And because he's in the virtual world and he himself is digital, he can do whatever he wants. And so imagine yourself wearing VR, projecting yourself into this world, and start interacting with your world. That's really what's happening. That's easy. We could do that today. And we're going to need to do that. We're going to need to do that because to visualize the amount of information that's going to come at you every day with your AI, you're going to go to work actually not against an AI. You're going to go to work with an AI. You're going to have an AI in your car. You're going to have an AI at work. And you're going to have AI in a bunch of different things. And I don't know if you're going to call it Alexa, Cortana, Siri, or Viv, or whomever. But the point being that you're going to collaborate with AI. Because they're going to do things you can't do, but without you, they can't do as much. And so an image might be, you go to work, you usually probably will be talking, but there might be other input devices, and you're going to start either projecting yourself in the virtual world or not, and you're going to start asking questions about, oh, so why is my conversion rate on my website in Malaysia last night dropped by 50%? Well, I'm on it, I worked on it last night, here's the report, here's what I found, here's what I don't know. And then you're going to start interacting and engaging and researching the cause of that problem. And you're going to be able to visualize charts and look at data. That's what you're going to be able to do. That little device of ours, that little amazing mobile phone that we all love so much, not going to be that good for that. We're going to need to find other ways to work. That's why work is changing, right? Not only physically, but how you're going to interact. So who else is drinking the Kool-Aid? Well, the editor of Kevin Kelly of Wired Magazine famously said, well, it's pretty easy. You just take the business plan of the 10,000 startups, and you just add, I'm doing X with AI. That's why these days you hear a lot of startups say, hey, yeah, we do AI stuff. Because it's cool. 2 years ago, we were doing mobile stuff. So you need to ask further, what do you do in AI? What problem are you solving? How big is the problem? Why do you use this technology or methodology in AI versus this other methodology, right? Why have you rebuilt from scratch? Can't you use something off the shelf, right? This guy, sure, quite pretty important. I mean, he had a baby in his life, so I think he's finding himself a bit challenged at home, multitasking. And so he figured that, hey, I really like that movie, that having a Jarvis at home doing everything for me would be really amazing. So he's working on it. We'll see if he's going to do anything with it. His AI team is obviously sitting really close to him at the office every day because that's something that he loves personally, but also he knows is extremely important for the future of his company. And just on that topic, so one of the keynote speakers at our conference was Hussein Mehana, and basically he's the director of core machine learning at Facebook, and they just launched this new platform called Facebook Learning. And he shared some cool stat with us. He basically said, hey, so here we have this platform, and there's basically $2 trillion instances of training happening every day. And we're looking at things like, vision, machine translation, ads, feed search, and Google is doing the same. I mean, the amount of data they're analyzing and processing every single day in order to make the algorithm smarter, faster, more efficient is incredible. That's the number of models they have, 500,000. And I guess that's a benchmark potentially in the industry, but it depends what kind of business you have. But Facebook is a pretty big company, and they have a lot of different products, and they have a lot of engineers. But they managed to get 25% of the engineers to actually interact with AI technology every day. Every day, 1 quarter. Now, if you're an AI team, 100% of your team does AI. But if you're a big company like that, I mean, ask Naver. How many percent of their engineers spend time working on AI stuff? Right? Interestingly enough, he said, look, you need to look at, you need a few people that actually create the workflow, the infrastructure. And for each of these people, we tend to have about 13 people that are actually just users of that technology. So that's an interesting ratio of efficiency, right? They're able to drive. And then you have, again, interestingly said, look, lesson learned, coexist. Don't throw an algorithm because the guy is not from Stanford or not from MIT. Doesn't matter. Test the algorithm. Don't have a bias. Because you're not a data scientist doesn't mean you can't come up with very interesting algorithms and very interesting correlations that other people might not have thought about. So actually they have this approach. They say, look, we don't throw anything out. We'll test it, validate it. It works, amazing. It doesn't work, out. And we had this guy speaking as well. Basically, Danny Lunch is the head of machine learning at Uber. And he's advocating that machine learning should be implemented everywhere across the company as fast as you can. I mean, Uber might be one of these first companies that's really shooting for the entire, basically an autonomous corporation. Right? That's really what they're going after. And what he said, just key points he said, look, each corporation can actually probably discover multi-million-dollar opportunities by just spending some very basic machine learning into some basic problems they have. And he says they need to look for the low-hanging fruit. They need to look for the 20% of the problem that will solve 80%. So today, there's massive amount of benefits for corporations to start thinking about using machine learning technologies. And they're not doing it. Now, I told you, so if you don't go tell them, that's your problem. And he also said, look, don't start with big data. Because big data means big problem. Just too much of it. You want to start with narrowly defined problems and get a clean set of data. And then you analyze that, and then you use machine learning, and then you reinforce the learning, right? We know these guys, of course. I think they are really going into an AI-first world. They want everything to be AI-powered. I heard they invested a lot of money in flying cars. These guys say it's super dangerous. It's going to kill us all. Yet, he's starting OpenAI, and he's actually investing a lot of capital, not just him and a lot of other people, for this OpenAI Foundation, because they want AI to be in the hands of everybody. And they want it to basically say, look, it should be in as many hands as possible. It should not be just in the hand of few people. These guys, they realized that they should be a software company, not a car company. Like many of the car companies today are realizing that the entire, because you and I think of cars as a car. Like, the Hyundai and the Mercedes and the Porsches. But behind that car, there are thousands and thousands of businesses and suppliers and people that manufacture pieces, billions of dollars of industries at risk of disappearing because most of that is going to be replaced by software, electric wires, and a few other components that have nothing to do with what is currently being manufactured by those people. So these people are stressed out. All right, we talked about that guy. No need for an introduction. I already shared a bit my insight. I think, to me, it's again about, and I think the player that played AlphaGo and trained AlphaGo before said it. He became a better player. So it's about us teaching the machine teaching us. It's not just a one-way street. It will become more and more of these two ways. And somebody said, I think it was actually an interesting way to think about it. For the first time in the history of the world, we as human beings are trying to evolve ourselves. Think about that. We're trying to evolve our species. It always has been put down on us by evolution. It was always a reaction to something else. For the very first time, we're trying to challenge ourselves and create new, quote-unquote, artificial intelligence. These guys, we talked about NVIDIA. Again, just 2 years ago, there was just about 100 companies interested in using deep learning. Now it's exploded. Right? Everybody is like going after this. And again, for better or for worse, because they might not need to go or want to go there first. What are some of the key sectors we see exciting things happening for AI? Fintech, IoT, future of work, logistics, retail, e-health, and many others. These are just a few examples, things that we get excited as investors. We're looking at alternative assets, credit and reputations, insurance, payment, mostly contracts, and again, blockchains, interesting things there. Smart home, smart cities, the whole freelancing movement and accessing talent and understanding how to manage talent. I'll give you an example. If I am Uber or Didi or any of these kind of on-demand taxi technology companies, they're not taxi companies, by the way, they're really logistic companies. But if I know it's going to be raining in about half an hour and it's Friday night in Seoul, and I happen to be one of these companies, I need to basically, in real time, deploy 200 extra drivers to face the demand I'm going to have. Now, I need to analyze weather information. I need to have real-time information. I need to be able to reach out to my drivers that are not full-time employees of mine. And I need to incentivize them to get out of whatever they're doing on a Friday night into their car so they can actually drive you guys around when it's raining. That software does not exist. It had to be invented. It had to be created. So more and more of these software and situations will happen. Example of a few investments we made, just to give you a flavor of some of the things that we like. We invested in a company that basically rebuilt a proprietary NLP technology, a natural language processing. And they rebuilt it from scratch because whatever they found off the shelf, those open source or even like proprietary platforms, were not working good enough. So they rebuilt it. And what they're doing is they're basically plugging into the voice over IP systems of the sales departments of corporations. They plug into the CRM system. And so they analyze in real time what's being said when the customer calls the salesperson. And not only they analyze what's being said, but they're able to tell the sales rep, okay, now you should say this, this, and this. And that comes from the best salespeople because that's what they say when the customers say that, and usually they're able to sell the person on the product. Or they can say, shut up. You're not listening to the customer, they're asking 3 times the same thing. Right? So you can see where that's going, but they can have a real-time understanding of the situation. Humans are training the machines. In the future, machines are training the humans. There are different areas of applications. Very smart team. Again, a lot at the early stage depends on the team. Another one we're investing into is a company that is actually building what we call the next generation machine vision technology. And founders has an incredible background. There's a lot of talk about machine vision technology these days because it leads to autonomous system. And Google is doing some very interesting things on the cars, processing a lot of information using the server farms they have. These guys, they went the other way. They say, you know what? We as humans, when we walk down the street and people are coming towards us, what we do is that we analyze each person very quickly. We understand their direction, their path, their speed. We assess all of that information. And we say, OK, if I go here, if I go there, I'm not going to hit anybody. Right? That's kind of my autonomous system when I walk in the street. Now, do I care about the color of the sky? Do I care about the building? Do I care about people walking by in the other direction? No, I don't care about that. I mean, I have the vision. I see it. But I don't analyze it. I don't process it. I don't use that information to make decisions. That's how the brain functions. And that's how these guys try to solve the problems of machine vision. They say, look, I can use a standard camera. I can use machine learning algorithm in the background to understand what I'm looking at. And then they can use LiDAR technology. So LiDAR is a cloud-based, cloud point systems. It goes as far down as 5 kilometers. So you're talking about a very long range of vision, right? Military-grade stuff. And they're able to use that very quickly on the areas that matters for what they need to do. And they can process that on the system with a very small footprint and very cost efficiently. So we see that as a very exciting next generation machine visions because they don't even need to be connected to the cloud. The amount of data they need and analyze is so thin. I call that lean data, not big data. They're actually able to make decisions autonomously without being connected in the cloud, which is interesting when you're flying things around or doing other things, or you have poor connectivity in the mountain range or somewhere. All right, consolidation race is on. I don't know, some reason, that's a report from Trax. I would think Amazon would be somewhere in there. They probably missed that one. But, again, a lot of consolidation happens in the United States. If you were to ask me, a lot in kind of Silicon Valley, the rest is in the UK. As investors, we want to actually see that sort of stats because we invest and ultimately we need return on capital. So seeing a healthy environment of acquisitions is good for us. It's also good for the entrepreneurs usually. And it's also good usually for the company that acquires the companies. So the first wave is already ongoing, and it's been a lot about talent. It's been about technology blocks. The big players have basically acquired incredible teams that have expertise, and they put them into their platforms, and they're solving problems underneath it. And then all you're going to see is the front end, which is the platform and solution they're going to deliver to you. So the next wave of consolidation actually, in my opinion, is going to be consolidation around applications. We're going to see a lot of companies emerging, solving important problems using narrow AI type of approach and become very valuable quickly. And then we're going to see companies that have not invested in AI so far, that are basically way behind the digital players you saw on the list here, are going to need to play catch up. And they're going to need to acquire a lot of technology and talent and solutions to not become obsolete. So, as somebody that spent a lot of time with income statements, as entrepreneurs, every one of you should know what that is. It's an income statement. Hopefully, you have a lot of revenue, you have some cost, you make some margins, you have sales and general and administration expenses, and then you even have like what you call depreciation, amortization. That's your investments you're making. And why I put that in here in very basic forms is because every single line of this income statement, no matter what business you run, is going to be impacted with AI. The way you sell, the way you manufacture, the way you basically sales and marketing and automation and ad. You can add Google, they know a lot about that, or Facebook. Even the way you invest, financial advisors, investing your money in other ways. And so if you run a business today, you cannot be thinking, it's not for me, it's not important, it won't impact me. It will, sooner or later. And if you're a small business, you can move fast and you can adopt this technology to be a lot more efficient. It's not about firing people. When you're a small business, it's actually augmenting your capabilities. Staying small, augmenting your capabilities. Now, if you're a big corporation, you might want to be cutting costs, because if you're in an environment that is of low growth, or if there's a recession out there looming, then the first thing you're going to look at is to try to cut cost. So I would argue that a lot of them will be looking pretty aggressively at that point using AI technologies in a lot of ways to automate their processes. So with that, thank you. I think we have a bit more time for Q&A, but if you want to run out and eat, I won't blame you. Yeah. If you can just tell me your name, and then if you're an entrepreneur or...
Okay, my name is Yoonjae Yu, and I'm studying AI and thinking of a few ideas. And my question is, do you have any specific field of industry that will grow in the future most if AI is applied?
Well, I guess the non-answer is everything. And the right answer is, I don't know. And the important answer for you is, what do you love to do? What do you know that someone else doesn't know, or something that you want to know much more and better than other people? Because it's, entrepreneurship is hard, very hard. Building your own business, again, you're gonna give up unless you love what you're doing. At some point, you will be out of money. At some point, your partner will want to leave you. At some point, this customer is not going to sign the deal. There's always going to be something. And so it's easy from the other side to think, oh, look, it's so easy. This guy is so successful. He's making so much money. There's so much hard work that goes into entrepreneurship that you really need to do what you love. Because if you're just doing it for the money, you will give up, guaranteed. Right? So being visionary in understanding where money and value will be created and disruption will happen, that's your insight. That's what you need to have. But then once you have understood that that's what's happening, then you need to zero in on something that you truly care about or you're more knowledgeable about than other people, and that's your insight. Right? In the book 0 to 1, I think Peter Thiel said, it's like, what is the truth that you know that no one else knows? Right? That's one way to look at it. Any other questions? They're going to play with you all night long. It's going to be each side.
Hi, thank you for the wonderful speech. And I'm a student studying industrial design. And I'd like to ask you about if AI is already embedded in our mobilities, like smartphones and our laptops, then how it's gonna develop in the near future, and how it's gonna look like in terms of form factors.
I think it's for you to invent. You're the person designing experiences, right? I think it's interesting because in Silicon Valley, there's a lot of talk about that. There was a lot of talk around UX, UI design and how important that is. And I think the way you design and think on mobile is very different than the way you actually design on laptops, of course. And very similarly, the way you're going to be designing the user experience with AI is going to be very different. And so today, there's actually a shortage of people in Silicon Valley that have this expertise of designing and understanding experiences with AI. Because AI, again, is very general. But if you talk about just, there's a lot of talk about voice input, right? Natural language, communication interface. Well, again, somebody was mentioning earlier, what I do with my watch is not what I do on my phone. And would I talk to my watch? No, that would look a bit silly. So people don't really do that. Does that mean that you need to have another hardware device that you put in your ear that can actually talk? And there's a company in Korea, actually, that's doing that, right? So I think you're going to see, and again, themes of investment, we don't invest in hardware, right? We invest in companies that do hardware and software. And hardware is usually complicated and costly and full of headaches. But if it allows you to capture unique data that no one else is capturing, so hardware with a mean to an end, that's very valuable, right? So Fitbit is a good example, right? They were able to basically, or Jawbones, those guys were able to run the world's largest sleeping study, at a fraction of the cost that it was costing before, and found interesting correlation the same way that research that costed millions and millions of dollars. They were able to find the same correlations in 20 minutes time. So that's the incredible power of capturing this kind of data, and they are the only ones who have it, and a few others. Now what's interesting is now there are other correlations being made. They say, do you have a Fitbit, or are you tracking your health? Raise your hand if you have one of those devices or on your phone, 10%. So those of you that raise your hand, you tend to be better financial investors than anyone else. Statistically, it's been proven that if you actually monitor your health with those devices, you tend to be better and more careful in your investment decisions in the stock market. Right? Now, do you think that's valuable information for a financial service organization? Should I give you a better rate on your borrowings because you walk into my bank with a Fitbit? Are you a better bet? Should I discriminate? Am I allowed to? Right? These are going to be interesting questions. So the answer is, I don't know. What I know is that, again, as humans, we're very poor at predicting. And so that's for sure. But definitely reinventing the way we're going to be engaging day-to-day lives with this ever ambient intelligence or contextual intelligence or information. It's going to be interesting. So I think the people that are creative will have a good time. Yeah, go ahead.
I am a student studying university. Is there any limitness that modern AI technology has?
Oh, plenty. Yeah, plenty of limitations, and I'm probably not the best expert to talk about them. But maybe the simplest example I could give you is, even a kid, you give him a ball, you hold it in your hand, and you drop it, and it drops. If I give you a banana, as a kid, you will probably know that if you let it go, it's going to drop. The machine has no idea. The machine can't make that correlation. Right? So being able to port information and intelligence in one context into another context is something that I think the science field is working really hard on. But I think we're seeing interesting things with emotions. I know people that have built incredible models on the stock market. They say, look, I built an AI that allows you to visualize in real time in the stock market the emotions. Right? What do you do with emotions in the stock market? I say, well, look, human beings are terrible. They're scared. So they always overreact to the news. So when there's bad news, they sell too much. When there's good news, they buy too much. So he's using his emotional AI to understand the market and trade against the nature of human beings and making money at it. Right? And I think the question is, when are we going to be able to port this kind of knowledge from one vertical to the next? Right now, it's very siloed. It's very narrow, still very narrow. When you're going to be able to start bridging things, That's where it's going to become interesting and scary at the same time. Oh, yeah.
Hi, my name is Nari Kim, and I'm working on peer-to-peer marketplace, and I'm also interested in conversational commerce area.
Sure.
So I heard that the Operator is one of famous service in the United States, Operator and Magic.
Well, there's a few people that are targeting that space. I mean, Kick Interactive is one of them. You know, the bots are basically coming in force. There's a lot of conversation about how the bots are basically becoming an interface. And I think there were some interesting conversations at a conference where people that are in the bot industry, they say, look, the bot might become an interesting premise to you downloading an app, for example. So it might not apply in your context of peer-to-peer because you're talking probably about virtual assistants to help you shop and discover information, I would imagine. And that's definitely happening. I mean, large corporations are investing and partnering with startups in that area because they see the impact. Really, I mean, it's like it's game-changing, and that's why Facebook is investing a lot, and every player is going after that enterprise play. But there's a lot of. Do you know how many apps an average American person downloaded last month? Take a guess. How many apps would an average American have downloaded on their phone last month? How many? 100 apps in 1 month? Okay. Anyone else? Any guess? Don't be shy. There's no right or wrong answer.
Less than 10?
Less than 10? Yeah, you're getting closer. Actually, 0. The average American downloaded 0 app last month, which means that they pretty much found the apps they like and they stick with it. And once in a while, they might discover a new app, but that's not really happening. So a lot of people are talking about how they're going to start, reaching out to their users if people don't download the app. So that's why there's a lot of investment being done now with deep link technology, the ability to search and authenticate people across services, so that now you can start getting the information without having to ever download the app. Right? That's why a lot of the apps are becoming API platforms, because they want to be able to deliver the information and services across different environments. And so the bot in that context might be an interesting way to engage and create relationships that will lead you to want to download the app. Right? So they were talking about how the bot could become a precursor to you downloading an app as a way to get to know the service and the value you will receive. But I think, in your context, I would absolutely look into automating these kind of conversations. But there's a company called Mezi that was speaking at a conference. I think it's an interesting approach, so that's why I share with you. Machines are not really good today. They're getting better, but they're not perfect. And we as human beings, we have a very, very small threshold. As soon as something is weird or the uncanny valley, we basically stop interacting with that stuff. We don't like it. So people realize, hey, if I become a virtual assistant and you say, hey, I'm going to Bali next week, and can you show me some places I can rent? And I want a pool, and here's my budget. And you're going to text that into the application. And they're going to ask you a few more questions. When are you leaving? What airline do you prefer? And then they're going to start coming back to you. And maybe in that context, getting instant response is not needed. If you're leaving in 2 or 3 weeks or next month, you could wait 24 hours. You could even wait 48 hours. You say, well, I don't have time until the weekend to look at it, so just send me the information over the weekend. So speed is not always important. You need to always remember what's the context of what you're doing, right? And in that context, what they do is that they actually use machine and humans, and they don't tell you which is which. Well, do you care? Not really. I care about the quality of the service I get. And so if they use machine 20% of the time or 80% of the time, or in some scenario, in some questions it's 80% and others is 20%, doesn't really matter to me. But to them, what's very smart about that approach is say, look, I'm building the best engagement and value to my clients. Because anyone that's using only machines can't perform against me, because I'm using human augmented technology. I'm using the best of both worlds, machine and human. And up and until my machine gets smarter, because I create the best value with my customers, I'm going to have more customers. More customer means more data, more engagement, more interactions, which I can then use to train my software to become even better than my competitors. So you see that reinforced cycle of learning, because you use an hybrid approach of humans plus machine, not just machine. So maybe something to think about for your peer marketplace.
Thank you.
All right, now everybody everybody wants to chat.
Hi, my name is Soo-hong. I'm a software engineer, and thanks for your insightful keynote. And I have two questions. First one is, what do you think about bot market? Nowadays, a lot of global companies produce their own bot. And second question is, as an investor, what do you do to get an insightful idea, usually?
Insightful idea. Well, I'm not in the business of competing with investments, right? So I think we're in a privileged position as investors because a lot of entrepreneurs, from around the world in the model we built, come to us and share with us their ideas, their insight, what opportunity they saw, and why they're the best at doing this and winning this. So we're privileged in that way. So I don't need to get inside, but I'm obviously learning a lot faster than the average person that is not doing what I do. So that's the privileged position I'm in. And when you can do that, you can compare and contrast. And so when I see 3 entrepreneurs from 3 different countries building pretty much the same software, solving the same problem, that tells me one thing. That's a global opportunity. Because people that don't know each other identify the same pain point and patterns. Now, what's even more interesting sometimes is that these people solve the problem in 3 different ways. Because they have different cultures, different constraints, different means available to them. And so the way they will solve the same problem will be different. And that's very interesting when you invest in innovation. I'm not sure I answered even half of your first question. The second one was what?
What do you think of
The bot market, thank you. Look, a lot of noise, a lot of established players. I think everybody's going to start launching a bot. It's just going to be, is it going to be a fade? I don't know. I think you're going to have core technology that will empower a lot of bots out there. And I think people will build on top of it specific layers of knowledge and understanding based on what they're trying to do. So is that a bot that's actually chatting into a game, like a VR game even? Because I've seen companies doing that. Or is it going to be a bot that chats on a peer-to-peer marketplace? Or is it going to be a bot that represents me? Because I'm sick and tired of answering my emails. So I want a bot that answers 80% of my emails that are not really important, and I always say the same thing, right? Or someone I read that was pretty cool, I think, is somebody says, hey, I've got this LinkedIn page, talks about my profile, I'm a student, and I'm doing this, and I work there. And I got these recruiters that all day long, they send me messages, hey, so why did you go to that school, and why did you take engineering major, and what did you learn at this company, and who did you work with? So the guy built a bot and a conversation so that basically everybody that pings his resume pings his bot. And the bot responds to 80% of the questions up and until it's a certain level, and then it gets to him. Right? But I think we're going to see a lot more interactions like that. A lot of people will start playing with that. So again, it's going to be a bit like the App Store. Everybody can build an app, so you're going to have a lot of bad stuff out there and a few good stuff. But I think the few good ones will become very valuable. Everybody's getting hungry. Oh, a few more questions.
Hi, my name is Sue, and I'm a student majoring in computer science. So during your presentation, you talked about all the positive aspects of AI, but do you see any downside aspects or potential risks?
A lot of them, absolutely. Look, it's not a matter of when we're going to have a major cyber threat or major attacks out there. Security is terrible. We've built a lot of softwares today. It's not secure. We're just using it as the lowest common denominator, saying nobody cares. So it's okay. Until something bad will happen, and then we'll care. And then we'll actually reinforce and build more stronger software. So yeah, I mean, the conversations go pretty crazy. Like, so you're going to have an AI that's going to go rogue, and it's going to do a lot of bad things out there. So how are you going to stop that? because you as a human being have no ability to understand what the heck is going on, because it's happening in the digital world so fast that you have no idea. So you're going to need to build good AI. So you're going to have good cop, bad cops, AI good, good guys and AI bad guys. They're going to fight it off each other out there. And that's happening every day. You guys are getting attacked by North Korea. So you have a bunch of guys that are actually coding against all the cyber attacks that you guys are receiving every day. So it's happening already. And then the question is going to be, who's going to judge who was right, who was wrong, who was responsible, how much damage has been done? And it's not going to be a human being either. It's going to be an AI judge. So we're going to have an entire digital AI system with bad AI, good AI, AI judges. I mean, that's a crazy world. But, so do I see threats from that side? Yes. Do I see even threats on the human aspect and the society aspect? Absolutely. People are scared of changes. People going to blame the robots any day of the week because we love to blame everything that happens bad to us to somebody else. So there's always going to be somebody guilty for that. I mean, look, a good friend of mine is spending his life in AI. He says, I don't want people to come burn my house one day because I'm an AI researcher. No, I mean, he means it. It's like, look, there are going to be witch hunts, at some point if people start losing their jobs. And I think the real challenge is the ability for people to continue learning. So back to what I said earlier, we're going to spend our life learning. The days of you having one job for the rest of your life is gone. I mean, it was not even your generation, it was not even my generation. So that's gone. So you need to continue learning and retooling. And the problem is that today the education system failed because we're getting more and more professional teaching and tutorials, but a lot of it is either paid by the corporations on the job, or it's something that you need to pay for yourself later on in life when you don't have financial means because you just got laid off. So I think a lot of things are going to need to change, and I think technology might allow you to access knowledge and technology and information to retool yourself, to learn more things. The problem is that my parents, your parents, try to teach them something new. They don't want to. Right? They might not be even open-minded enough to want to change anything. So I think that's really something that as a society we're going to need to think about. There are a lot of people today, they're going to be irrelevant in 10 years, maybe in 5 years. So how do you help these people stay relevant? Right? So yeah, no, I see serious impact, absolutely. I think as a society, look, we didn't go through the Industrial Revolution without any major issues. So I don't see why that would be any different.
Thank you.
Sure. There's more questions, sorry guys. If you're get some water.
Hi, my name is Young-Jun. I work in a manufacturing company.
Sorry, which company?
A manufacturing company.
Manufacturing company, okay.
Yeah. I'm very curious about the AI technology's impact on memory business. So, like for instance,
On the manufacturing business, or did you go more specific?
on memory.
Oh, memory.
Yeah, memory. So, like basically.
Oh, you mean the processing power, the memory, the chips, or you mean the human memory?
The memory chips.
Okay.
Yeah. So basically, if you're trying to use more of a AI technology, do you need to build an extra data centers, or are you trying to manage to get the solution you want from the existing data? Like, because I'm sure you've mentioned to use the clean set of data, and you also mentioned the average American people downloaded 0 apps in the past few months. So I'm just curious about how are you guys going to manage all the data, or existing data and the newly created data? So yeah, I'm trying to figure out.
So there's an avalanche of data. I mean, we're drowning in data, right? That's the challenge. So every corporation has a massive amount of information, whether they know it or they don't, and whether they capture it or they don't. And even if they were to capture it, they wouldn't even know where to start because they are locked away in old legacy systems and new systems, and the teams don't talk to each other. So there's nothing correlating these things. So you need to hire a bunch of consultants, pay them a lot of money to bring those things together. So I think the silo the fact that all the data lives in different places, that's one challenge. So the challenge of any corporation today is understanding what data they have, which 20% is valuable for their day-to-day business, and which 80% is maybe non-valuable. And so I like the idea of the company we invested earlier, which is what information do you need to drive impact? So if you're a manufacturing company, there's certain processes and things you do and assumptions you have about the price of certain goods, that you need to use to manufacture what you're doing, or water or energy consumptions, or all these things impact the profitability of your business. So I would be asking myself, okay, if I go back to my income statement, what are my biggest cost centers, or maybe where's my revenue coming from, and what's impacting them the most, and how can I start throwing AI technology at that, and what data do I need to solve this thing? So if the price of silicone is impacting your business, then maybe it's something you should be looking at to predicting better. Maybe you should be looking at hedging that price better. Or if you need a lot of water to wash in your processes, how do you get better access to water, or cheaper, or these sort of things. I mean, things that that's kind of how I would try to think about it as a company. The other is, I think there's going to be plenty of information out there. Now, whether or not you're going to be able to access it is a question. So you might be able to access some of it. Some might be free, like for example, all the court rulings that I mentioned earlier. They're like, it's public information. It's put out there on the internet, so everybody can access that. The stock market is interesting information. It's not really free, but you can potentially get it for very cheap. There's a lot of it, with a lot of frequency. So I think it's going to be interesting when you start being able to train AI systems on some data and port it over, as we talked a bit earlier. But no, I believe that startups are not going to be limited. Look, they're going to be limited if they want to go deep into deep learning stuff, if they don't have a lot of informations, and they can throw a lot of resources at it. So back to putting that into new server farms. So yeah, you're going to need to create new data. And you're going to use all data, existing data, and you're going to create your own data. As a startup, I want you to create your own data, or put it together in a way that no other people are able to do for whatever reasons, because that's ultimately what's going to make you valuable. Look, Google, their business model, selling data. Hundreds of billions of dollars of market cap, selling data. So data is truly the value. It's locked away in a lot of the businesses right now, and they don't know how to use it and monetize it, because they were not digital first. They were analog businesses. They were part of the first industrial revolution. So they don't have a culture in-house to think about data and to turn that into valuable insight. And that's the challenge. And also the challenge in AI, someone that's in that field that lives and breathes every day tells me, Ben, you don't understand. The way you solve problems use AI is the 100% opposite way of we as a human being like to solve problems. Right? It's almost like we like to think through the whole thing to come up with the solutions. Whereby it's almost like in AI, you throw a question and you let the AI decide how to get there. It's a completely unintuitive thing for the humans to do, because it's basically surrounding control. You're giving up control and you let the AI come back to you with answers. And that's scary. All right? So changing that even mindset inside corporation is very hard. But I think, I think we're trying to put it online, but the presentation from Danny Lange from Uber on bringing machine learning across the entire organization, I think is a good presentation to watch. We're going to have it on our website. I think we're going to be hosting it there. Thank you for your question.
Oh, hi, my name is Pyung-hoon, and I'm a student majoring in mathematics. And I just have a question, like, how do you keep yourself updated to a mainstream market, like in technology sectors? Because there's a flood of information that pours into you every day, every night. And you don't even know each and every startups on the other side of the world. So how do you know the general flow of the technology sectors?
Well, I don't know if I do as much as I should, but because to your point, there's an overflow of information. So at some point, you need to pick specific filters. One way we filter information in our business is all the 1,000 startups that we look at every year. They are referred by someone. Sometimes it's rare they reach out to us across directly, but very often someone has already talked to the entrepreneurs, vetted who they are as people, the kind of business they're building, the kind of traction or momentum, or what's happening with them, and why they are a global opportunity and want to come to Silicon Valley to build big. So that's already a lot of filters in and of itself before we even start looking. Now, does that mean that I'm missing things happening in India or even in Korea or in China? Absolutely. Absolutely. You can't know it all. So I think you need to decide what is it you do, what's your vector of impact, and then once you know that, then your world revolves around that. And you want to try to get the most relevant information associated with that. So for us is discovering innovation, making it global, and investing and building these companies together with the entrepreneurs. So that's what we thrive for in the world of AI, in applied AI right now. In a few years, we might evolve that theme to say, look, applied AI has come and not gone, but it's built up and mature. And now there's a new area that's becoming very interesting, but it's more likely going to be associated with smart software. So I don't know if I really answered your question, but I think that's kind of how I see the world. And I think sometimes information floats to you, and I'm privileged again to be in the position I am, when I have all these smart people that come with lives of learnings, boiled it down to 1 or 2 sentences, and can deliver it to me. So that's incredible.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, maybe one last question, and then we can. Oh, last 2. If you have to go, don't worry, you can go.
Hi, Ben. My name is Sang-sik, and I know that you're international venture capitalist traveling world one from another country. I got 2 questions for you. I'm asking this question on behalf of my friend who is starting up a AI venture company, which is related to the AI field. And I'd like to ask 2 questions. First is, what makes Korea so special in terms of venture field among other countries like Japan or China, which is already carried on huge amount of investment in their venture AI society. And second is, actually my friend is meeting a series of venture capitalists and say what makes you stand out among those kind of investors who are willing to invest in his company. If you say something, if you can help us out in a more specific way, would you please elaborate? Thank you.
Okay, I think I understood both questions. And your English is great, by the way. It has nothing to do with your English. So I think first question. The field of AI in the different markets, what makes Korea special or not special compared to China and Japan? Look, it's interesting. I was meeting with a famous VC that's backed by one of the wealthiest Chinese men, so I won't name the VC, but you can get a sense of who that might be. And basically, look, they invest in deep tech stuff, right? From AI to food technology and other things, right? They say they have made 0 investment in China. Their word, not mine. They say China, there's no deep technology in China. Now, that's a generalization. We all know that Baidu and Andrew Ng is doing some great work in deep learning and training, by the way. We didn't talk so much about that. Big constraint in that industry, besides the data, people. People is the biggest bottleneck in that industry. People that are trained and knowledgeable about AI. So I see an army of people being trained on AI in the next 5 to 10 years. Because we're going to need, if you thought it was hard to recruit a data scientist, try to go recruit an AI specialist. All right, very hard. So to continue on your question, look, China and Japan, very different dynamics as markets. Both huge markets, much bigger than Korea. So you see big companies emerging out of these ecosystems, more often than what you see out of Korea. I can't really comment for the Chinese market. I don't live and breathe in that market, but most of what I was able to glance is that it's huge, and a lot of investors are throwing a lot of money. A lot of wealth emerged over the last 10 years and 20 years, and is trying to find other avenues than real estates and other markets because they can't make much money. On the public market, it's not really good anymore. On the real estate, it's not as good as it used to be. So it's trying to find its way into alternative assets, which are startups, because now people have seen Alibaba and how successful they have been. So everybody's chasing that tech market. And there's a lot of momentum investors. And so it's such a big market. You need to move so many people very quickly. So Q-commerce, payments, and all those things, but it's hyper competitive. People have told me, if you're not Chinese, building a business in China, you're never going to make it. You're not going to make it because you're not going to have the drive. You're going to always have plan B. Plan B is going back to Korea, or plan B is going back to Hong Kong, right? If I don't make it in China. So you need to be a mainland guy, and you need to live and die by your reputation and your business, because otherwise you're never going to have the drive. So that's a little bit of color on kind of, at high level on China. Japan, my experience with Japan is that, like Korea, they're struggling with English, but honestly, I think English is becoming more and more prevalent, so I don't think it's going to be an issue in 3 to 5 years. I think most of you already speak English now, and I see young kids in Korea, they all speak English pretty well. So I think English is going to go away as a problem, but you need to ask yourself, when you build a business, what's the primary language of your business? So let's say you start a company tomorrow, 3 people. All right, random, 3 people. My guess is that 3 Korean people in Korea. If I do that in Silicon Valley, I close my eyes, I grab 3 people in this room, I'm going to have a Brazilian, a Mexican, a French guy. It's got a lot more diverse pool. And because of that, because they all have a different native language, they will start speaking English among each other, because that's going to be the unifying language. And because of that, that will allow them to attract people from no matter where they are to come and join that company and feel part of it. Because they won't feel, oh, they don't speak French, oh, it's a French company. Like, if I don't speak French, I'm never going to get promoted. Those guys are always going to talk in French, and I'm not going to be part of this whole inner circle thing. Right? So the way you build global companies is very important. I think in Korea, that's one of the weaknesses, is that not as much diversity, which means that you tend to build pretty local-minded businesses. And it's hard for you to absorb foreigners as part of your companies as you grow, because they're not going to be part of the upside or core team, or there's a language barrier. Same a bit in Japan, but Japan, they don't care because the market is big enough. So they're like, why do I need to go out of Japan? Right? I think Korea, there's a lot of pressure on you guys to go global, which I think is a good thing. But again, you need to prepare early for that. And early means as soon as inception of your business, and decide, look, we're all Korean, it's all good, but the business language in this company is going to be English. And when there's more than 2 people together, they should speak English. Otherwise, you will exclude other people as you grow, right, your business. It's not easy to do. It takes discipline, right? It's like thinking outside the box. But it shows your commitment. So look, great talent, great school in Korea, good engineers, maybe lack of sales and marketing expertise and understanding of business concepts. A lot of people coming out of the employee world, transferring into the enterprise world, entrepreneurship world. And that's very different worlds. So, I think it's just the ecosystem maturing, having more successful entrepreneurs, emerging of this ecosystem and reinvesting into the ecosystem, right? I think that will take some time. The last question you had was, what makes you stand out as a VC? Why you? Why would an entrepreneur work with you? And with you or me or any other VCs? That's very important, super important. Most people come to Bootstrap Lab not for the money we have. There's so much money in Silicon Valley, it's not funny. So we never cut the biggest check. But we're the guys that are actually going to be caring. We're the guys that have been there before, that will try to empower you to make original mistakes. Don't make the mistakes everybody else has made before. Try to make new ones. And so in that context, we build a big network of people that helps you from all the things you need early on, from understanding of your product and your market and what your priorities are. The priorities are always the hardest thing. The bad ideas is easy to dismiss, but you usually have 3 good ideas. The question is which one you do first. Because if you do in the wrong orders, you might kill your business. Not because you're stupid. They were both 3 very good ideas. But if you execute the one you should do in 6 months compared to the one you should do tomorrow, you're going to spend your time on the wrong things. And as a result, you might not get the momentum, the data points, the customers, or the money you need from VCs to survive, or just your own money, right? So the value add piece, what everybody in Silicon Valley calls the value add, is this like intangible thing. That's the network, the experience we have, the reputation we built. You can talk to every entrepreneur we talked and work with. They will tell you, are we good guys? Are we bad guys? Are we helpful? Are we not helpful? The ecosystem is very transparent in Silicon Valley, more than other places. People talk a lot. So, if you lie, it's going to come back really quickly. So I think that's that transparency and level of expertise. So entrepreneurs tend to like VCs that are operators, that have been operators and entrepreneurs before, because they see eye to eye. They have empathy for how hard it is. And in Silicon Valley, the mindset is, I, as an investor, am privileged to have an opportunity to invest in your business. Because you, every day, are taking the risk of not taking a job and investing all your time and energy and resources in building something new, and something new is always very hard to create. And you take all the risk, and your family is taking all the risk. I'm taking some risk. I'm investing my investors' money and some of my money into your business. But you're the one driving the boat. You're the one slaving every day and hopefully making that worth billions of dollars. So in that context, I'm privileged. Now, I'm choosy. Don't work with everybody. Right? That's my right. But your right is to pick an investor that will add value to you, that will add value to your business. So how do you win deals? Is usually with this kind of reputation, this kind of knowledge, this kind of network, this attitude. Our founders, they call us at midnight. They send us the text overnight. We're there for them. It's the weekend. It doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Because receiving an investment from a VC should be like getting married. It's not dating. My fund is like a 7 to 10 years fund. So I know that after I invest in you, and we're going to have a relationship for 7 to 10 years. Might be longer than most girlfriends and people getting married. So it's a long-term commitment. And so there's going to be good days and bad days. But you know what? There's one commitment we ask from every entrepreneur we invest in. I say, look, I want to know the good, the bad, and the ugly. There's always those three things. Always. Don't lie. Be honest. Of course, work hard, but that's a gimme. But it's very much like good, bad, and ugly. Because if I know, I can help. I can ask my friend to help. But if you lie to me or if you hide it from me, I don't know how I'm going to help you. Right? That I can't. So, I think that's very disarming in terms of conversation we're having very upfront with entrepreneurs. If you're trying to sell me at the best valuation, at the best price, and you think you just need the money, everything is solved for you, I'm probably not the best investor. And usually early stage, you don't have that many people that have figured everything out. They know they're going to need help, they're going to need skills and relationships they don't have. And so we call that assertive humbleness. It's a very rare character that we try to find in people. I want you to be very smart about what you know. I want you to come across very confident that you're one of the best in the world about this topic and this subject and this insight you have. But I also want you to be smart enough and reasonable enough to say, you know what, I don't know that as much, and I need help here, or I need to recruit somebody to help me. Because good entrepreneurs hire some of the best people in the world to help them where they're bad at things. Right? And so if you have that maturity, if you have that insight, you're going to usually be a more successful entrepreneur than others. All right, I think it's getting late for everybody, so unless there's, one last questions maybe? Yeah, sure. Oh, two more? Are we done? One more, go ahead, one more.
Hi, my name is Michelle and I work in new business development. I guess you touched on it earlier with the previous question, but do you have any advice for Korean companies on how they could crank up their AI technology level to a globally competitive level?
The $1 trillion question. Let's see. What advice? Well, look, surround yourself with smart people. and people that have experience, and sometimes they are a lot older than you are, and so you need to be able to bridge different worlds. I think one of the best, I think somebody was looking at the millennial generation and say what is allowing them to be very creative, very successful in some ways that was not possible before. And I think they're able to really reach out on a global scale to talent and people that have answers to the questions they're trying to solve and collaborating together. And they use an entrepreneurial way of doing that and to rallying people around that. So I think you as a founder trying to build an AI technology company in Korea, you should make sure that you should access as much resources as you have available to you, both locally, but also outside of Korea. Otherwise, you're just going to build something that's just too Korean. And Korea is not where a lot of the thought leaderships and more knowledgeable people are about that. There's smart people here. But again, you need to bridge outside. So number one, try to solve a big problem, a worthwhile problem, because that usually attracts people. Right? If you say, oh, I just want to, create an auto reply to my email. Well, is it worth? Is that changing the world? I don't know. Is it changing my world? Yes. But is it changing the world, making it a better place? I don't know. But if you say, like these guys, they say, look, we want to basically provide mental health and wellness support emotional support to kids out there because there's too much suicide in this world. Right? That might be a bit more, something that touches more people. And so when you solve big problems or important problems, people tend to care. And because they care, you might be able to attract incredible, smart, talented, brilliant people to your cause and your startup and to you as a person. So I think that's important. That's the first advice I would give you, is to really kind of bridge outside of your existing network here. All right. Thank you so much for being such a great audience. You stayed so late. Thank you.